Perfect timing. I almost ripped an earring out of my freaking ear. Anyway, this is a follow-up to my video about the dormant eggs. And I like the pressure going live, so I'm just going to go with it. But I just want to make a point about the biodiversity of the planet Earth. How, if you think about it, I mean, the basic philosophy of a Christian and what is because that mankind, this is all for mankind. And no, I'm not being a narcissist, and no, I'm not being a hubris, because I still believe that we're fundamentally dependent on God, but that we are little gods if we submit our ego and ourself to God, because we have to admit we're human and we're fallible and we make mistakes, but Christ does not, and neither does that. But anyway, all of this is for us, right? And that's the whole reason why Satan hates our guts. So, let me answer this freaking text. So, this planet Earth that we live on, I mean, it's so special, it's so important. There's so much beauty and genius to this creation that it's just astounding if you just take a minute. So, of course, it's possible that God made the universe, and he made he made from anything that there's a little tiny ant that lives deep in the earth, or worms that live in the Arctic that can survive sub-zero temperatures way, the highest altitudes there is, little worms. They can, from that to bugs that live in the arid Sahara Desert. That someone said that the frogs that he's seen that there's in the desert, one night, after one night of rain, all these baby frogs start to hatch. Well, where do the eggs come from? That's my point. So there could be dormant eggs all over the planet Earth. And just if you pause to think about the biodiversity of the planet Earth, and you're like, wow, there's squids, there's penguins, there's eagles, there's crows, there's slugs, there's salamanders, bears, sharks. If you think of all the variety, your mind starts to really appreciate the beauty of this planet Earth. So, what about dragons, and what about Sasquatch, and what about werewolves, and what about rocks, ROKS, and what about giant birds that are the size of a Cessna? What about woolly mammoths? What about mini T-Rexes? What about all of these creatures? Well, it is possible that they could live. Not only is it possible that some of them, like werewolves and Sasquatch, could be half part angelic, so they can slip in and out of our dimension, but then there's actual real physical creatures that can hatch out of eggs that just need the right circumstances to hatch. And this is what I'm talking about. So here's a mainstream article that I found this morning. It's called, it's by the BBC, which I actually was interviewed by the BBC to perhaps have a show, but that fell through. Anyway, tardigrades return from the dead. Boil them, deep freeze them, crush them, dry them out, or blast them into space. Tardigrades will survive it all and come back for more. So, for all you people out there that say it's impossible, or you can't have a mini T-Rex, they're dead, they're all dead, or it's impossible, blah, 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 blah. No, yeah, it's, so much is possible. Oh, little one. Okay, so this was published March 13th, 2015. If you go into outer space without protection, you will die. The lack of pressure would force the air into your lungs to rush out. Gases dissolved in your body. Fluids would expand, pushing the skin apart. Ooh. And inflate like a balloon, so you just explode. Your eardrums and capillaries would rupture, and your blood would start to bubble and boil. And even if you could survive all that, which you could not, ionizing radiation would rip apart the DNA in your cells. Mercifully, you would be unconscious in 15 seconds. But one group of animals can survive this. Tiny creatures called tardigrades, about 1 millimeter long. In 2007, thousands of tardigrades were attached to a satellite and blasted into space. After the satellite had returned to Earth, scientists examined them and found that many of them had survived. Some of the females had even laid eggs in space, and the newly hatched young were healthy. It's not just the harsh environs of outer space that tardigrades can survive in. The little critters seem to adapt at living in some of the harshest regions on Earth. They have been discovered in 5,546 meters, 18,196 feet up a mountain in the Himalayas, in Japanese hot springs, and at the bottom of the ocean in the Antarctica. They can withstand huge amounts of radiation, being heated to 150 degrees Celsius and being frozen almost to absolute freaking zero. Now think about that. Now that's making my mind bubble. How do these seemingly insignificant creatures survive in such extreme conditions, and why have they evolved? Adapted? Use the right nomenclature, you punks. You're supposed to be scientists. How have they adapted to these superpowers? It turns out that tardigrades have a host of tricks up their sleeves which would put most organisms to shame. So it goes on to describe their tricks. This is just one example, all right? So you can imagine if there's this thing that can survive all of that, what about another creature's eggs, which we have seen examples of that in the past because I cited that scientist who treated those porous rocks and did hatch eggs that were dormant. So if that's possible, then imagine what else is possible. And like I said, going back to what I said in the beginning of the video, start to think about, what if it was true that all of this was indeed made for us? Wouldn't it make sense then? All the evil, if you follow it to its root, why would Satan want to kill us then? Why do Christians say that Satan is the big destroyer and the adversary? Because if God promises that we'll sit on the right hand of him at the great white throne and judge the angels, well, there's a whole big reason for jealousy, isn't there? Say hi, Shirley.
Hi.
Well, I'm going to sign off. I got a long weekend ahead, and I just wanted to give you some food for thought. Have a wonderful weekend. Say bye.
Bye.